All right, today we're going to talk about Japan's economy, but probably not in the way you're used to hearing about it. See, instead of a story of decline, we're going to explore a really fascinating idea, Japan's blueprint for something called quality stagnation.
So let's just kick things off with a pretty big question. What if that one number we're all obsessed with, GDP growth, isn't actually the best way to measure if a country is successful?
Okay, so take a look at this. This right here, this is the story everyone tells. For 40 years, while other big economies were shooting for the moon, Japan's GDP has been, well, famously flat. Economists call these the lost decades and usually paint this picture of total economic failure. But is that what's really going on here?
And that apparent contradiction, that brings us right into our first section, the Great Stagnation Paradox. I mean, look at this timeline. For almost 40 years, the official story has been the same, stagnation. By all the usual rules, this should be a complete disaster, right? A national crisis.
But what if it's not a disaster at all? What if, like this quote says, Japan's story is actually a masterclass in redefining what success even looks like? And this is where the story we all think we know gets turned completely upside down.
Okay, so if the economy isn't growing in that classic sense, what is actually going on inside the country? Well, let's take a look at how Japan is somehow thriving without the growth. First up, check out this number, 84.6 years. So what is that? Well, that's the average life expectancy in Japan. It's one of the highest on the entire planet. People are living long, healthy lives. I mean, that doesn't exactly scream country in crisis, does it?
All right, now let's look at another number, 1.3. That's how many violent crimes there are for every 100,000 people. That is an insanely low number. It points to a society that's incredibly safe, incredibly stable. And let's add just one more piece to this puzzle. 98.4%. You know what that is? That's Japan's literacy rate. It's practically universal. So, let's just recap for a second. People are living long lives, the streets are super safe, and pretty much everyone is highly educated.
And all of this, it brings us to the real mystery, the core question we're trying to answer here. How on earth can a country's economy basically flatline for nearly half a century, and yet its people are thriving by all these really important measures of well-being?
Well, the answer is, this was no accident, not at all. It's the result of some very deliberate and pretty unconventional choices. It's a unique blueprint that we're calling the policy of stillness.
So let's start with a really powerful number, 55%. That is the top rate for Japan's inheritance tax. It's one of the highest in the world, and honestly, it's a cornerstone of their entire social and economic system. So, how does this work? It's actually pretty straightforward. You've got wealth being built up over a lifetime, right? But then, when it's time to pass that wealth down, it gets taxed heavily. And the result of that? Well, concentrated dynastic wealth, the kind that gets passed down for generations. It gets broken up. It's forced to circulate back into society instead of just piling up at the very top.
But you know, it's not just about government policy. It's also about a really different cultural mindset. Which brings us to our next big idea, the concept of consumable homes, not investments. Okay, this is a really big deal, a complete shift in thinking. In the West, we're basically trained to see our homes as an appreciating asset, maybe the biggest investment we'll ever make. But in Japan, the whole view is totally different. A house is seen more like a consumable good, kind of like a car that actually loses value over time. And thinking this way has these huge ripple effects across society. When you stop treating housing like it's the stock market, guess what? You get way fewer of those crazy speculative real estate bubbles. The focus naturally shifts to the quality and usefulness of the home itself. And maybe most importantly, it means people aren't buried under a mountain of household debt. Okay, so let's pull all these pieces together, right? You have policies that keep wealth moving and a culture that avoids those dangerous speculative bubbles. So what you're seeing, it isn't stagnation as a failure. It's the bedrock for a whole new blueprint for success. And this brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer, a term for what we've been describing, quality stagnation. What is it? Well, think of it as an economic state that deliberately puts social stability, fairness, and a high quality of life ahead of the never-ending chase for GDP growth just for the sake of it. This table really lays it all out side by side. You've got the traditional model on the left, always chasing high growth, letting wealth pile up, and banking on asset appreciation.
And then, on the right, you have the quality stagnation model. It's all about stable well-being, making sure wealth circulates, and focusing on social equity for everyone.
So when you look at it this way, Japan's economic story isn't an accident and it's not a failure. It's the outcome of conscious choices. They chose social stability over that often chaotic, speculative kind of growth.
And all of this leaves us with one last and, I think, pretty provocative question to think about. As countries all over the world are struggling with massive inequality and the environmental limits of constant expansion, you have to ask, is Japan's model of quality stagnation actually a more sustainable, maybe even a smarter blueprint for the future?